Long Night and Battle for the Dawn. 8,000 years before the Targaryen Conquest, a winter known as the Long Night descended upon the world, which lasted an entire generation. Thousands starved as the crops and fields lay buried under dozens of feet of snow. In the darkness and cold of the Long Night, the White Walkers descended upon Westeros from the farthest north, the polar regions of the lands of always winter. The conflict that arose from the Long Night is known as the Battle for the Dawn, as the White Walkers sought to bring an end to all life and to cover the world in an endless winter. The Long Night is how the Westerosi refer to a period when a terrible darkness fell across the known world. It occurred during the Age of Heroes, approximately 8,000 years before Aegon's conquest, in the midst of a great winter that lasted for years. The Long Night lasted a generation and laid waste through famine and terror. History. The invasion of Westeros by the first men and their encroachment into the lands of the Children of the Forest, the natives of Westeros, led to a long period of warfare between the two people for control of the continent. As the children grew desperate, a group of their greenseers resorted to dark magic, capturing one of the first men and turning him into the first of the White Walkers, whose purpose was to protect the children from the first men. However, the White Walkers grew beyond their creator's control and became a threat to anyone living, becoming the most feared creatures in the known world. Recognizing the danger, the children and the first men reached a peace known as the Pact. The Battle for the Dawn. None knew why the White Walkers came when they did, 2,000 years after the signing of the Pact and 8,000 years before Robert's rebellion, but they killed all in their path. The White Walkers reanimated the dead as whites to kill the living at their command, and soon the White Walkers and their hordes of undead were sweeping across the continent. Eventually, the first men and the Children of the Forest formed an alliance and rallied to defend themselves. In a struggle known as the Battle for the Dawn, the White Walkers were defeated and driven back into the uttermost north, where the far northern lands became known as the Lands of Always Winter. The Wall, a massive fortification standing 700 feet high and stretching from one side of the continent to the other, was constructed by the first men, children, and giants along the northernmost isthmus of northern Westeros to bar the Walkers' return. Legend says that the wall was infused with powerful magic spells by the Children of the Forest that prevent the White Walkers from crossing it. The ancient order of the Night's Watch was founded to defend the wall should the White Walkers return to invade the realms of men once more. Aftermath. With the passing of the centuries and the coming of the Undulls, memory of the Long Night and the Walkers faded into myth. In the present day, most believe the Long Night to be nothing more than a children's story, and the White Walkers, Children of the Forest, and giants nothing more than legends. Belief in them survives only in the north, and even there they are presumed extinct. Certainly, none or very few were seen for the next 8,000 years between their supposed defeat and the time of Robert's rebellion. As the War of the Five Kings begins, disturbing reports have come back from the scouts of the Night's Watch saying that, after an abnormally long summer, winter is returning and the White Walkers with it. There is a danger of another long night, but given that the great lords of Westeros are short-sightedly more concerned with their petty power struggles, most have simply ignored the warnings. The situation leaves only the undersupported and undermanned Night's Watch to stand between the White Walkers and the realms of men. After Catelyn Stark leaves for King's Landing, Old Nan sits by Bran Stark's bedside to watch him. She suggests the story of Duncan the Tall and Bran replies that he hates her stories, he prefers the scary ones. She retorts that he is a sweet summer child who knows nothing about fear, and tells him that fear is for the winter and for the long night, a winter season thousands of years ago that lasted a generation, in which those who didn't freeze to death had to face the White Walkers, who ventured south for the first time and swept through Westeros. During Stannis Baratheon's march to Winterfell, the weather turns for the worse and a snowstorm delays his army. In order to better their chances of winning the upcoming battle in the snow which they both saw in the flames, Melisandre tries to convince Stannis to sacrifice more king's blood, this time, Stannis' own daughter, Shireen. Stannis is visibly shocked and disgusted by the suggestion, asking her if she has lost her mind. She insists that Stannis must be the undisputed king when the long night comes, but he rebuffs her and orders her to leave his presence. When Lord Commander Jon Snow and the wildling envoy Tormund travel to Hardhome to convince the free folk sheltered there to come back with them to Castle Black in order to settle south of the Wall, Jon Snow argues that the long night is coming and the dead come with it, and only together they can give the White Walkers a fight, and maybe even beat them back. Snow's words prove immediately prophetic, as during the process of taking the wildlings to the ships the White Walkers arrive with thousands of whites and massacre most of the free folk. While autopsying the body of Maester Wayland, Archmaester Ambrose tells Samwell Tarly that despite the widespread skepticism of his colleagues, Ambrose believes that the Long Night cannot be pure fabrication, since numerous unconnected sources all describe similar events. He maintains, however, that if another, similar event is about to occur, that Westeros and its inhabitants will find a way to survive it. Westeros. According to Westerosi legends, in the midst of this darkness a race of apparent demons, called the Others, emerged from the uttermost north of Westeros, the polar regions of the lands of always winter. They wielded razor-thin swords of ice and raised whites to fight the living. The children of the forest and their allies, the first men, fought valiantly against them, but were driven southwards by their advance. The Others were eventually checked when it was discovered that weapons made of dragonglass could kill them. Legends from the north claim that the last hero made contact with the children. The first members of the Night's Watch drove the Others back in the battle for the dawn. Steps were taken to ensure that the people would never be caught off guard by an invasion from the north again. Bran the Builder supposedly raised the wall, an imposing structure of solid ice and magic, stretching 100 leagues from the gorge in the west to the Shivering Sea in the east, cutting off the lands of always winter from the remainder of Westeros. The Night's Watch guarded the wall and protected the people from threats beyond the wall. Essos. Rhoynar. The Rhoynar tell of a darkness that made the Rhoyne of Essos dwindle and disappear, her waters frozen as far south as the joining of the Selhoru, until a hero convinced the many children of Mother Rhoyne, such as the Crab King and the Old Man of the River, to put aside their bickering and join in a secret song that brought back the day. Lomas Longstrider, in his Wonders Made by Man, recounts meeting descendants of the Rhoynar in the ruins of the festival city of Croyane who recount this tale to him. Further east. Other legends from the further east, including E.T., state the blood betrayal began the long night. The Lion of Night was unleashed upon the world after the Maiden Maid of Light turned her back on it. According to a legend from E.T., during the long night the sun hid its face for a lifetime, ashamed at something none could discover, and disaster was only averted by the deeds of a woman with a monkey's tail. A great hero, known in different cultures as Azor Ahai, Hyrkun the Hero, Intar, Neferian, and Eldrick Shadowchaser, wielded the flaming sword Lightbringer and led humanity to victory. Some say the 5 forts were built by the Pearl Emperor to guard against the Lion of Night and his demons. The legend of Azor Ahai spread from Ashai and is especially prevalent among the followers of R'hllor. A later prophecy claims that the Others will return and Azor Ahai will be reborn to lead the fight. There is also a similar prophecy about the prince that was promised. Battle for the Dawn. The Battle for the Dawn was a legendary battle against the Others which marked the end of the long night during the Age of Heroes. It is possibly connected with the legends of Azor Ahai, the prince that was promised, and the last hero. In the midst of the darkness of the long night, the Others emerged from the far north, wielding razor-thin swords of ice and raising the dead to fight the living. The children of the forest and their allies, the first men, fought against them, but were driven southwards by their advance. The Others were eventually checked when it was discovered that weapons made of dragonglass could kill them. According to the song The Night That Ended, the first members of the Night's Watch rode against the Others and drove them back north in the battle for the dawn. Maesters generally believe the defeat of the Others and the construction of the wall occurred 6,000 years ago, although true history states these events were 8,000 years ago. In the books. As of the 5th novel in the A Song of Ice and Fire series, A Dance with Dragons, very little detail has been given about what actually happened in the battle for the dawn. Written history doesn't date back that far, at least in Westeros, so only oral tradition and half-mythical accounts come down to the present. There are vague legends that a single first man whom Old Nan refers to in her stories as the last hero unified both the first men and the children of the forest and led them to victory. Stories about the Long Night are also found in lands far beyond Westeros, though they may not always refer to it as such. The World of Ice and Fire sourcebook explained that several cultures throughout the continent of Essos have their own legends of ancient cataclysms, all of which, supposedly, occurred around the same time as the generation-long winter. Also in these legends, the ways in which the long night was overcome all follow similar patterns to what is told in Westeros. Descendants of the Rhoynar people who inhabited the regions of the modern-day Free Cities claimed that the mighty Rhoyne River froze as far south as one of its tributaries, the Selhoru, roughly where Myr and Tyrosh now lie, a claim which the Maesters have confirmed with reasonable certainty. The Rhoynar believed that the long night only ended when a single hero beseeched Mother Rhoyne, the goddess of the river, along with the minor deities that were her children, to join together and sing a magical song which brought back the dawn. In E.T., it is said the Lion of Night, the primary god worshipped in the region, fathered a son on the Maiden Maid of Light. Known as God on Earth, he was the first emperor of E.T.I.'s Great Empire of the Dawn, a semi-mythical civilization that allegedly existed during the Dawn Age before the Long Night. Thousands of years later, a descendant of God on Earth known as the Amethyst Empress was usurped and murdered by her own brother, an event known as the Blood Betrayal. This caused the Maiden Maid of Light to turn away from humanity in shame, and the Lion of Night came forth in all his wrath to punish mankind's wickedness, inflicting the cold and darkness of the long night. According to the stories, the sun hid its face from the world for a lifetime, ashamed at something none could discover, and disaster was only averted by the deeds of a woman with a monkey's tail. Stories about the long night are even found as far east as High. According to Melisandre, a great darkness descended upon the land, and a hero known as Azor Ahai wielded a flaming sword named Lightbringer in battle against the darkness to win back the dawn. The holy texts of the Lord of Light prophesy that there will come a time when the long night will return, and Azor Ahai will be reborn to lead the people of the world to victory once again. This specific legend is apparently widespread across the further east of Essos, because Azor Ahai is also known as Herkun the Hero, Intar, Neferian, and Eldrick Shadowchaser, depending on the region in which the story is told.
If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.